it's Mrs. Glenn. Welcome to the 6.3 Converting to Vertex Form video. Okay, in this video we're actually going to convert our quadratic that we've been working with to vertex form so that we can find the axis of symmetry and the vertex very easily. You also can use the vertex to find vertex form, and I'm going to show you that as well. So vertex form is y equals a parentheses x minus h quantity squared plus k, where h and k is the vertex. So when you find the vertex using the formula that we did in 6.2, which was x equals negative b divided by 2a, you're going to take that x value and plug it in where h is. So if you remember in class yesterday, I also talked about h comma k is the same as x comma y. So when you find the x value for your vertex, it's the h. And when you plug it back in to find the y value of your vertex, that is the k. All right, so remember from the previous slide, we have our vertex form, which is y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. So first thing you have to do is identify your a, b, and c of your problem. So we know a is 2, b is 1, and c is negative 5. And now we're going to use the vertex formula, which was x equals negative b over 2a, to find the h part of our vertex form. So we're going to plug in negative b, which is the opposite of b, so that would be negative 1, all over 2 times a, which is 2, and that turns into negative 1 over 4. So that is our x value, or our h value. So if we were to rewrite this, we would have h being negative 1/4. So we have minus negative 1/4. And I'm just plugging it in as we get the answers. So now we're going to take negative 1/4 and we're going to plug it into wherever x is in our problem. So we have 2 and we have negative 1/4 squared plus negative 1/4 minus 5. So then you're going to find what negative 1/4 squared is. So when you multiply negative 1/4 squared, you get 1/16. So that is 2 times 1/16 plus, and then this is plus a negative. So actually we could just write it as minus 1/4. And then we have minus 5. So now we're just going to multiply 2 times 1/16, which if we had this over 1, we could cross cancel and reduce it by 2. So this turns into 1 and this turns into 8. If that confuses you, it's just simplifying before we start. So we can go back and do it the normal way, which would just end up being 2/16, which turns into 1/8 when you reduce it, because you multiply straight across when you multiply fractions. So 1/8 minus 1/4 minus 5. And in order for you to add and subtract all of these together, we have to have common denominators. So we could multiply this by 4, this by 4, this by 4, or 8, this by 8. All right, so in order to be able to subtract these, we have to have a common denominator. So we could have a common denominator of 8. So if we multiply this by 2, and this by 2, and this bottom by 8, and this top by 8, everything would turn into 1/8 minus 2 over 8 minus 40 over 8. So 1 minus 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 minus 40 is negative 41 all over 8. So now we have our y, which is the k. So now we're going to plug that in, and so that would just be minus 41 over 8. And we also know that this part minus a negative 1/4, we can just change that to plus 1/4. So if we get rid of that, it would turn into plus 1/4, because remember the formula is minus h. So if h is negative, that's minus a negative. so that would just be plus when you change it. So we found h to be 1/4 and k to be negative 41/8. So now we just plug in the rest. So a, we already know, is 2. So we put 2 here. X and y are just all of the ordered pairs that are on the line. So you don't have to change x and y. X and y stays exactly that inside the formula, just like in the linear functions we did y equals mx plus b, and the only numbers we changed was m and b, and left y and x the same. So same thing here, we leave y and x alone, and we substitute a, h, and k. So our final answer is y equals 2, parentheses, x plus 1/4, quantity squared, minus 41/8. Now, if you were given this problem like this, and they were to ask you, what is the vertex, you could immediately look and say, well, this is my h of my vertex, and this is the k of the vertex, and I know vertex form is minus h, so in order for that to be plus 1/4, then h must be negative 1/4, and we have plus k, and if this is minus 41/8, then my y is also negative, so that is the vertex when you go to graph it on a coordinate plane. All right, next one, we have to do our a, b, and c. So we have a equals 1, b equals negative 3, and c equals 6. And remember, our vertex form is y equals a, parentheses, x minus h squared plus k. And our vertex formula is x equals negative b over 2a. So we take the opposite of b, which is 3, and 2 times a, which is 2 times 1, and that turns into 3 over 2. So that is our x. So when we go to replace that, we're going to have y equals, we already know a is just 1, and we have x minus, and it's minus x of the vertex, which is 3/2, so minus 3 over 2. That's your h. And then squared, so now we're almost done. We only have our y to find, and we'll be done. So we take 3/2 and we plug it into the question, which is x squared, so that's 3/2 squared minus 3 times 3/2 plus 6, and I just used our problem to replace x with 3/2. So 3/2 squared would be 9 over 4. Minus 3 times 3/2 would be 9 over 2, plus 6. So now we're going to multiply by 2 on the top and the bottom to change our denominator to a 4, so we can add and subtract. And this one we'd also have to multiply by 4 on the top and the bottom. Oops. So then we have 9/4 minus 18/4 plus 24/4. So 9 minus 18 is negative 9, and negative 9 plus 24 was the same thing as 24 minus 9, which is 15. So negative 9 plus 24 is a positive 15/4. So plus 15/4. And you're done. So again, if you're given this problem and they ask you to identify the vertex, we would look for the h and the k. So h is negative 3 over 2. I'm sorry. So that's negative as part of the formula, so it's just h is 3/2, and k is 15/4 because plus k is positive, and that's a positive 15/4. So our vertex would be that. All right, now we're rolling, zooming through these. So we have a equals negative 2, b equals negative 4. There is no c. Our formulas are y equals a, parentheses, x minus h squared plus k, and x equals negative b over 2a. So we're using the opposite of b, which is 4 over 2 times negative 2, and that's our vertex formula that equals x. So now we have 4 over negative 4, which is negative 1. So when we rewrite our problem, we have y equals, a is negative 2, x, and then we have negative 1. So if it's minus negative 1, that's the same thing as plus 1 squared. And now we just have to find k. So we're replacing x with -1 in every part we see that is an x in our original problem. So -2 parentheses -1 squared minus 4 times -1. Well, -1 squared is 1, and 1 times -2 is -2. -4 times -1 is +4, and -2 plus 4 is +2. So our answer is +2 over here. So if you're asked again, given this problem, what is the vertex? Well, I see +1 there, and I know the formula is -h, so that means that h is -1, and y is +k, and that's +2, so that's just a 2. So our vertex is -1, 2, and the vertex form would be this part right here. All right, then we have another problem. So we have a equals 4, b equals 0, and c equals -16. So if you notice, this -16 does not have an x on it, and that is not b. b is bx in the middle of your ax squared plus bx plus c. So if there is no x on that 16, that has to be the c value. So don't fall for that and make a mistake. So we have y equals a parentheses x minus h quantity squared plus k, and then x equals -b over 2a for our vertex. So we take the opposite of b, which is just 0 again, over 2 times 4, and 0 divided by anything is 0, so our h value of the problem would be 0. So we have y equals, a is 4, x minus 0, quantity squared, and if we plug 0 back into our formula to get y, we have 4 times 0 squared minus 16. Well, that would just be 0 minus 16, which is just -16. So that would be -16 here. And when you are writing it like that, I wrote it like that so you can see h and k as 0 and -16, but x minus 0 is nothing. So this ends up actually turning into y equals 4x squared minus 16. So you can actually rewrite it so that it's simplified. But if you were given this type of problem and you see just x squared here and they're asking you to find h and k, and look at this right here. This is the same thing as this. So if you're looking for h and k, you need to make sure that you know that you can expand that out into x squared minus 0 squared. I'm sorry, x minus 0 squared minus 16, where your h is 0 and your k is -16, and that would be the vertex. Go Seahawks! Woo!